Coming to you from a cozy little condo high atop Old Fourth Ward, Atlanta. Welcome to The Ron Show on America One Radio. Here's your host, Ron Roberts.
Hello and happy Friday, if it's a happy Friday. I mean, we have to go into a Friday in something of a good mood, right? What a week it has been, and here we come to the weekend. I have college football to absolve my mind of all the worry for a few hours tomorrow and a few hours on Sunday. And God willing, both Georgia and the Atlanta Falcons will make me a happier man at the end of those few hours of diversions. Otherwise, I don't know. Do I go to the cabinet for the brown liquor? No, I don't. I kid. I actually don't drink that much at all. I think my vices right now are Coke Zero, coffee, and cats. Welcome to the Ron Show, and thank you for listening, whether it's on the America One Radio network app or at progressivevoices.com, or if you've learned about this show through the podcast network that you choose to listen to podcasts on. Thank you so much. I appreciate you tuning in. Yesterday, I woke up in New Orleans, Louisiana, said goodbye to my buddy Daryl as he headed off to work, and packed up my things, grabbed a shower, and hit the road, and did a good bit of driving. I mean, a good bit. It's a healthy 7-hour drive from New Orleans to Atlanta. So I had the opportunity to catch up with some folks that I hadn't talked to in a while. When I'm calling someone, they know I'm driving. That's usually about the only time that I want to have a conversation with someone beyond what could have been a text message. That's me. I'm more like, could this have been a text message? Could this have been an email? Otherwise, if I'm calling you, it's usually I'm on the road. And that's the case. I did catch up with a few folks yesterday. I also got to spend the day, or a few hours, listening to the Thom Hartmann radio program, which also airs on Progressive Voices and America One Radio. I actually chose to listen through the Twitter X. He does a live feed, video and all. I chose to listen to that through Bluetooth, so I didn't have commercials. Got to listen to some of his book club stuff. Anyway, Thom Hartmann is a quality listen if you ever get the chance to, and he opens up the phone lines. He gets lots of folks calling in. The folks calling in were revelatory, more so than Tom. And no disrespect, Tom, more so than Tom. Although Tom is he's a bright guy. He really knows what he's talking about. I came away after a few hours of listening, and it's hard to find the fight in the voices of those who were calling in. It was hard to hear the fight in Thom Hartmann either. The left of center population in this country, and even some in the center, are exasperated and dumbfounded and beleaguered and unsure what to make of Tuesday's results. And you're going to see an overwhelming amount of pathology going on here. A lot of hand-wringing and infighting. There's an article in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution today, political reporter Greg Bluestein reporting that Georgia Democrats struggling to process the scope of Donald Trump's victory, a romp through a political battleground that showed the limits of the left-wing coalitions they hoped would be a bulwark against his comeback. Yes, there's infighting in the Georgia Democratic Party already. First of all, let me just correct him on something here. The limits of the left-leaning coalitions, that's part of the problem, if you ask me. The left-leaning coalitions weren't what I believe the Harris-Walz campaign or Democrats at any stature, state or federal, were actually going for. I've been telling myself for quite a while, and I've been openly asking on this show, so if Harris wins this race, if Kamala Harris wins this race and Donald Trump is shuffled off into the abyss at Rikers or whatever, or just gone from political culture altogether, where do the Lincoln Project Republicans go? Where does Liz Cheney go? Where do these never-Trumper Republicans, what happens to them? And then I give the analogy of the little boy helping the snake out of the pit that they're both in, right? And at the top of the ladder, as both are climbing out of the hole, the snake bites the little boy, and the little boy asks, well, why'd you do that? Well, I'm a snake. I fully expected that would be the case, that as soon as we were out of the hole, Republican gonna Republican. But instead of looking to the left, I don't think Democrats did enough looking to the left, in all candor. Anyway, I'm like one sentence in Bluestein's article, and I'm already quipping here. As Democratic leaders sift through the demoralizing aftermath of Trump's win over Vice President Kamala Harris, which came even as Georgia's overall electorate grew more diverse, many are pointing at flaws within the state party's infrastructure. We moved the needle in Fayette County, said Joe Clark, the county's Democratic chair. But Georgia didn't get out the vote the way they should have, and it's probably the fault of the state Democratic Party's leadership. In quiet conversations in public forums, activists and organizers such as Clark are raising sharp questions over how a once ascendant party that celebrated Joe Biden's flip in 2020 and U.S. Senate wins in 2021 and 2022 suffered such a grievous defeat. Instead of gearing up for lengthy litigation over a tight Georgia race, so many party figures expected this week, they are trying to come to grips with a state that moved further to the right and a nation soon to be governed under Trump's political mandate. Well, let's go back to the Joe Biden flip in 2020 and the Senate wins in 21 and 22. I've said all along, Georgia's not a blue state. Georgia's not a down-the-middle purple state. Georgia is still, and the numbers bear this out, a purpley red state. And I don't know if we can sit here and talk about complacency or, oh, we've crossed the finish line, we finally got here, we can coast. I'm not so sure that that's necessarily the case, but I do think that one of the canaries in the coal mine that rears its head again, and I hate to put this on Stacey Abrams because Stacey Abrams has done a fantastic job, and her organization Fair Fight have done a fantastic job in registering voters and organizing and making Georgia a state that's in play. But as a candidate for her own campaign, I would say that the Kamala Harris campaign fell victim to the very same thing that I said cost Stacey Abrams when she ran for re-election. Hugging the blue counties, never leaving them, can't let go. I call it the mommy toddler syndrome, where the little kid is so beholden to mommy, just gripping mom's leg, that the toddler never wanders off to learn how to walk on its own. It just stays gripped to mom's leg. Every step mom takes, that toddler just keeps gripping. What I mean by that is, in Stacey Abrams' last run for governor, she rarely left the safe confines of Metro Atlanta blue counties. Metro Augusta, Richmond County. Columbus, Georgia, Macon, Georgia, Bibb County. Chatham County, Savannah. Athens, Clark. When you don't go out to woo voters in Dalton, Georgia, Vidalia, Georgia, you're going to have a hard time winning the entire state. And I'm not saying that you're ever going to flip a county that's ruby red. You can't expect to wander into Marjorie Taylor Greene's district and flip Polk County, right? You're not. Trust me, I've been there. But what if you energize, I don't know, half a dozen, 30, 50 folks in Rockmart, Georgia, by holding a rally there? And the folks from Cedartown came over, and the folks from Cave Spring came to see you, and the folks from south of Rome come to see you, Dallas, Paulding County, they come to see you. Yeah, those numbers start to add up, right? You go from dozens to hundreds, maybe even thousands. There could be a comma in the number. Holy smokes. You do that 10 times, and suddenly there's more than one number in front of the comma. And in razor-thin margin states like Georgia, 11,780 votes. I believe there's only two numbers before the comma there, were the difference in 2020. Why couldn't a two-number, then comma, number be the difference in 2024, 2026, 2028? The Harris-Walz campaign fell for the same thing. every time they came to the state of Georgia. It was more often than not in metro Atlanta. The occasional stop in a place like Macon. I mean, even the bus tour. Remember the vaunted bus tour? As soon as Tim Walz was the nominee, the thing that excited me the most about Tim Walz was that I feel like you could take him into a Bass Pro Shop or a Gander Mountain. Trust me, there's going to be more Trump-like folks there. And he'd be relatable. Might even sway a vote or two. In a tight margin race, that's what it takes. But that vaunted Harris-Walz bus tour on the throes of his becoming the vice presidential pick for her. Remember we hear, they're going to do a bus tour in South Georgia. So smart, so exciting. Go hit some of these red spots and start to flip some votes or energize the voters that you have there that might just kind of be in their, coma. It happens when you're a blue dot in a sea of red. Sometimes you just kind of get swept into a coma where you're like, well, my vote ain't going to matter. And then you meet high-profile candidates because they came to your town and, oh, my God, I didn't know so-and-so from the bait and tackle shop was also a liberal. And next thing you know, you realize you're not alone. And power in numbers. And damn if you don't go vote. And damn if those numbers don't add up. Well, the Harris-Walz bus tour of South Georgia, remember, it was termed South Georgia, it was like 80% Savannah. They ventured out into the suburbs to go to a high school, and they drove the buses through two towns, honking horns. Didn't stop, just honked horns. That was the bus tour of South Georgia. It was Savannah. It wasn't South Georgia. It was Savannah. The safe, cozy, comfortable confines of an already blue part of the state of Georgia. And I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time today getting into the here's where Democrats really f***ed up or anything like that. I don't think in general this is just a Democratic Party problem. I've said this for 2 days now in conversations on this show that I think this nation lacks an ecosystem, an apparatus that answers to the right-wing media ecosystem that exists. Talk radio, three cable outlets now. Podcasts, lifestyle podcasts that aren't necessarily political, but sort of wander into that from time to time. There's a lot of that. I believe that has a lot to do with the information gulf that exists. I was on the phone. My friend Sonia, she is someone who has worked in politics since the mid-1990s, right? She's exasperated. I mean, she's not, and she is. She acts like she's not, but she definitely is. I'd call her yesterday, and she sounds chipper. Hey, how you doing? I'm sitting here. She, by the way, is an African-American female, and I'm trying to reach out to her because I have to know how much this hurts, She went to college with me, and I know a lot of her friends are in sororities, and the whole black sorority community, fraternity community. They're a very strong, very passionate, very powerful, and very prideful group of people. So I reached out to her thinking maybe I just need to give the soft touch. How you doing, hon? You handling this okay? She answers the phone, all chipper, all great. And I mean, within 60 seconds of us talking, though, her response is, well, we just need to lie like they do. I don't think we need to lie like they do. We have the advantage. Honest to God. I mean, I'm not just trying to say this because I'm a partisan or I'm trying to, change your mind or anything like that. We have facts on our side. What the right-wing media ecosystem has to do, the mental Pilates that they have to craft all the time, the wordsmithing, I call it the Frank Luntz work, the wordsmithing that they do to make water not wet, to make day look like night. I mean, it's work. We don't have to do that. We have facts. We have data. We have math. We have science. They all have a liberal bias. But that's what we need. That's what we need. We need an ecosystem that is good at not just combating the bullshit, but at letting the truth put its pants on before the lie gets halfway around the world. Great piece that Jay Bookman wrote in the Georgia Recorder. I'm going to share that with you in just a few minutes. It speaks to the reality that we live in today. we're all in mourning thinking, oh my God, I can't believe there's so much of this in our country. This mindset, this divisiveness. And Jay Bookman kind of cuts it clear. Yeah, no, this is who we are. I'm paraphrasing, but that's kind of the gist of his column. So I'll dive into that in just a little bit and expound on it as well. That's what I do. The Ron Show here on America One Radio, progressive voices via TuneIn or wherever you podcast. Follow this show on your preferred social media platforms while you're snoozing all of your MAGA friends. I'm not saying unfriend them. Hell no, don't unfriend them. I mean, seriously, that's retreat. We got to engage with folks where they are, and social media is by and large where they are. So don't unfriend them, snooze them for a few days, let them get this crap out of their system. But also, while you're there, follow The Ron Show, at Ron Show ATL, Twitter X platform. Yeah, I'm not leaving that. Instagram, Threads, Facebook. The thing that kills me about Facebook is the stuff people share. They don't realize just how on the mark, on the nose, on brand they can be sometimes. I've seen a lot of folks sharing this AI image of a train, the long train with you see the locomotive up close, and off in the distance the rest of the train's coming with a huge plume of pollution. The smoke coming from the coal-fired train with a long trail of pollution as it rolls through on 19th century technology, the rail there and the train, with the plume, and the plume has the U.S. flag superimposed over the bottom half of the plume. I mean, nothing says modern MAGA GOP quite like 19th century transportation mode, swathed in patriotism to hide the plumes of air pollution, right? That image has been all over social media, and I just have to chuckle. I mean, how else? They're not going to get it, but I do. And sometimes the inside joke is just as damned funny. Or the folks who are sharing, my best friend Jeremy, his parents, Mrs. O'Lean and Mr. Larry, they're wonderful people, salts of the earth. They're also full-on Trumpers. What are you going to do? I mean, she was a school teacher. It was like first grade, but still, she was a school teacher. And for them, abortion is the thing, being that's the thing that it's their issue. It's what drives it. We learned, by the way, that some folks can be pro-choice and still not want to align with the Democratic Party. That's a branding problem. That's something the party's got to address for sure, no doubt about it. But anyway, Mrs. O'Lean and Mr. Larry, they're good people, great neighbors. They were wonderful to me as a kid. They're sharing all of these, memes of, God's will and Jesus answered prayers and all this stuff. And it kills me. It kills me when I think about Mr. Grab 'em by the pussy. Is there rationale for God or Jesus answering their prayers? I mean, I will not hesitate to tell my own friends this: when you're posting your religious memes in response to electoral results for that scumbag, know that I can see through you. And I'm not religious, but if God exists, she can see through you too. And you don't have to worry about me judging you. It's not my judgment that you apparently are walking through life looking to live in accordance to. Yeah, I'm not unfriending it. I'm trying to actually let Trump voters know I'm not mad at you. I'm kind of mad for you that you are so disinformed. The ecosystem, the disinformation generators that have ensnared them and millions of American voters, it's victimized a lot of people, Trump included. He himself is chief of the misinformed, but because he has the pulpit and the means, he's the hero. He's the biggest puppet of them all. He and they obviously don't realize that they're being manipulated. Or maybe they'd get mad too, but they do complain about things throughout their life that the politicians they've elected affect, and the sources they rely on for news cover for them. The meme of the kid riding the bike, holding the stick, deciding, let me put the stick in the spokes of the front wheel, and then crashing, and then complaining that something else, everybody else caused that and not them, epitomizes to me the MAGA voter, the Trump voter. Would I be upset with any Trump voter I know is this. When you hear something so outlandish that you know it's meant to enrage you, look it up to get the whole story. I mean, with age comes wisdom, right? That's what we're told. If something sounds too ridiculous to be true, MAGA voter, it likely isn't true. My God, put down the stick, stay on the bike, and then when you get off the bike, grab a laptop and Google it. That's all. Jay Bookman's column, I told you I'd read that and dive into it. This is what America is. Next on The Ron Show. Stand by.
Call or text The Ron Show anytime at 404-919-2725. The Ron Show on America One Radio.
So already the finger pointing is going on, I'm sure, in several states and throughout the country as well within the Democratic Party. Here in the state of Georgia, no exception. Greg Bluestein at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution reporting on this. I'll have it in the show notes at ronshowatl.com. Interviews with more than a dozen Democratic figures, including key activists and elected officials, revealed painful rifts over the party's future as the focus shifts towards opposing Trump's agenda in Congress and preparing for the 2026 midterms. We didn't match the Republican energy. I wish we had more from our state party. That is State Representative Jasmine Clark, who, Bluestein writes, narrowly thwarted a GOP challenge in her Gwinnett County-based district. I felt like I was on my own. Georgia is a battleground state, and our effort in state-level races, which I truly believe only helps prop up the top of the ticket, was limited, she writes. We need a state party chair that legally can raise non-federal dollars. The primary job of the state party chair is fundraising, said Daniel Halpern, one of Georgia's top Democratic financiers, and she legally cannot raise the majority of the party's budget in that job. Halpern referring to the fact that she, as a federally elected representative, has her hands tied as far as fundraising goes at the state party level. But I got to be honest with you, this wasn't a money problem, man. Once again, I believe the numbers were like $1 billion or more fundraised for the Harris-Walz campaign to like $380-some million for Donald Trump. And he won with a lot less money. I don't think money's the problem. I think enthusiasm, sentiment, vibe was the problem, if you ask me. I'll definitely join in on those who want to complain about the way the party here at the state level works. It's machination. It's inability to do certain things. Nate Rich here in the article, who chairs the Cherokee County Democrats, said just about every decision he tried to make was delayed or bottlenecked. He described run-ins with, quote, painfully rude party staffers and weekly Zoom calls that went so banal they were insulting. I've never seen a more dysfunctional organization in my life, he said. I can't stress enough how much the party's bottom has fallen out across the state. I don't want to air dirty laundry, but we've got to force tough conversations. He goes on, the Democratic Party of Georgia needs a total reorganization all the way up to the top. No disrespect to the chairwoman, but being a congresswoman is a full-time job, and being the chair of a swing state is a full-time job. You can't possibly do both. Perrin Sheda, the Democratic chair of a key Cobb County district, said he was left fumbling for data about local voters, adding that he felt his warnings that the party was poised to nominate a far-right Republican masquerading as a Democrat for a U.S. House seat. Meanwhile, went ignored. We ignored it. We covered that story. Yeah, flat-voted. I mean, for not a state House seat, congressional House seat. Perrin saying the Democratic Party of Georgia was asleep at the wheel. This is not a personal attack on Nikema Williams. I don't know her or her staff, which is saying something in and of itself. But as a district chair, I had zero support from the party. Daniel Blackman, the Democratic nominee for a Public Service Commission seat in 2020, noted that Bobby Baker's 92 victory in a PSC race made him the first Republican elected statewide since Reconstruction and preceded steady GOP gains. We need to broaden our footprint and start thinking outside Metro Atlanta. Hello, Daniel Blackman. Welcome to the Ron Show. And that's a state party issue, not a local one. We had a lot of momentum, he said, but we haven't built out a bench or cultivated as many voters outside of Metro Atlanta. Yes, exactly what I've been saying. Can I also say, let me just pile on a little bit. Can I also say, I can't tell you how many times I've said on this show, complained actually, that the state party of Georgia has various social media accounts. I think that like state House Democrats, state Senate Democrats. The state party has its own social. There's all these various. First of all, stop doing that. You need one. Okay, you need one, and you need to do a better job of funneling information through that one. I can't tell you how many times they'd hold a press conference. They do these things. They're more like photo ops than anything, and they get 30, 15 seconds at the very least on local TV news, where they stand on the State House steps inside the State House underneath the Gold Dome, all spread out with a podium in front of them, a microphone, and in this echoey, large-ass echoey chamber, they hold a press conference, and someone is holding a phone, and it goes to their YouTube channel or their social media account, one or neither or both. Sometimes, if we're blessed, it'll go to all of them. Rarely. But there's no audio device connected to the phone. So if you're watching this on social media, it's painful to listen to. You can't hear everything that's being said. You may not even be able to see who it is. Like, I can't believe that the state party in a swing state doesn't have a media person or media people who are doing these things in real time with lower third graphics that identify who's speaking and better audio, et cetera, and so on. I'm sitting here doing a podcast from my house with a $300 mixing board and a laptop and a couple of microphones. Do you hear quality problems with my audio? Rarely, right? I mean, if I have a caller who's, in a busy area, that might be a problem, but that's not on my end. I was visiting my friend Jose in Myrtle Beach a couple weeks ago while campaigning for Mal Hyman, and we stopped and visited Latinos in Myrtle Beach. He has a video mixing board in his office and is able to have, because AI is so good now, and they've routed all of this stuff into video technology, he had 2 cameras that would go back and forth, literally mixing the video together while he's having an interview with, at the time I was there, Mal Hyman, and put it together in a matter of hours. You can't tell me the state Democratic Party can't do the same, but they don't. I've reached out to them several times asking them for audio, for video that I could pull audio from, that I could air their conferences or their, media sessions on this show. They don't do it. How many times? I can't tell you how many. Nikema Williams has been on this show once. She is my congresswoman. I'm here in Atlanta. She's been on this show once. She's been invited at least 6 times. And before anybody goes, oh, you're just, piling on you, it's sour grapes because they don't come on your show. Listen, that ain't it. I'm not sitting here saying that like my show is some necessary, needful thing. It's not. It's my hope that it will be. I'm trying to do this. We're 2 years in on this, and I'm on 2 online radio stations now, and have all the folks that listen to the various podcasts. I'm trying to become, but I've said for 2 days now, this is exactly the sort of thing that liberals need. They need to have an ecosystem that is there to help share not just information or talking points or responses, but facts, because we have those at our disposal. That's what moves our ideology. It's a curse. Damn it, we have to stick with facts and data and math and science. But we have them. And we need politicians and state and county parties and the DNC to embrace them. Instead of, I'm not saying, well, no, maybe not, I don't want to say instead of racing to mainstream media, but in conjunction with. I mean, Republicans go on Meet the Press, but they love being on talk radio. OANN, Newsmax, Fox News. That's the backbone right there. They know that if they can't get the message out completely because they're going to be rebutted on Meet the Press, they can safely go on Hannity, and he ain't going to rebut a damn thing. Hannity radio, Hannity television. Doesn't matter. And Democrats just don't seem to have any interest in embracing the folks who are trying to help them get their message out. My hand is up. My line is open. Just started this segment with the phone number, 404-919-2725. Ron at ronshowatl.com. Representative Williams has my email address. Her staffers do anyway. As do a lot of folks at the federal level. And I know that, Kamala Harris, Tim Walz, they didn't want to do lengthy sit-downs with anybody, left, center, or right. It was, here's how much time you got, and we got to get out of here. And here we are, commiserating why we didn't win. Jay Bookman at the Georgia Recorder wrote a piece. Let's take the focus off of us and put the focus more on them, right? Wrote a piece that sort of basically spells out what we're dealing with. We're all mourning the America we thought we lived in versus the America we actually do. His headline, "We knew Trump was a snake when we took him in." America just decided everything you stand for is a sham, a gleeful Trump fan told him on Twitter in the aftermath of Tuesday night. MAGA baby, he writes. Jay Bookman says, I cannot argue. That is indeed what has happened. Let's look at it dead in the eye. This is who we have become as a people and a nation. This is who we are. We have sold our birthright for a ticket to the freak show. It has not come as a surprise or shock. Not this time. You could see it in the polls. Yeah, he's absolutely right. How many times were we exasperated every time the polls go, how is it this close? It's insane that it's this close. He says you could see it in their campaign and TV ads that the Trump camp had a very specific theory about the American electorate, about how it could be manipulated and energized. There's that word again, manipulated. They executed on that theory, and they proved it correct. Fear, anger, resentment are powerful corrosives, Jay Bookman writes. Yes, inflation played an important role. Pandemic spending under Donald Trump contributed at least as much to the problem as spending under Joe Biden. And the problem was much worse for other industrialized countries than here. But it was the Democrats who paid the price for it. Sometimes that happens. Actually, I'll add to Jay's point here, that's happened globally. Everywhere, it's happened globally. The incumbent, the people in power at the time, have been paying the price at the polls. I've said all along, I don't think we did a good enough job combating that. Stephanie Ruhle said as much when she was asked on MSNBC to chime in on this. Here she is speaking with Nicole Wallace.
It is also true, though, that the perception of the economy under Biden is what provided the greatest weight to his approval rating. It's probably the largest factor that drove it to its low numbers. Why is that so different from the actual reality of the economy?
Because the fact of the matter is that we came out of the darkest hole, which was COVID, and we then experienced the biggest inflation spike that most of us have in our entire lives. So I can sit here all day with accurate data that talks about jobs and wages. And remind you, even when wages go up, we credit ourselves. When I get a raise, I say, well, it's because I am so good at my job. But when life costs more, I blame the government. Right. And so I can give you all the data that says we had the best economic recovery in the world, which we did. And when President Biden tried to tout that with Bidenomics, everybody flipped out on him saying, how could you do that? Don't you know we're suffering? Which they are. Because as you said, rent, mortgages, food, try to go on vacation, all of it costs so much more. So you've got scores of people across this country who are not jumping on board to be on Team MAGA and who don't hate Kamala Harris, but they're just saying my life costs too much money. And I've never experienced this kind of inflation in my life. Who was the person who was in office? And it was Joseph R. Biden. And that's not unique to the United States. We just saw that in practically every election in developed countries where the country just said, why does life cost this much? And they're not connecting the dots of, well, we're coming out of the COVID hole. This is where we are. And that's where we find ourselves today.
Ironically, I was calling her out in January because when, jobs numbers were coming back great and we were getting inflation under 4% back then, she was kind of making the spiel that, and I said something to her, I can't find it, it's on Twitter X somewhere, where I basically said, that smacks of coastal elitism. I'm glad things are great for you, but for folks on the ground at the working class, I'm going to take a break and see if I can't find that and come back. The Ron Show, America One Radio, Progressive Voices via TuneIn or wherever you podcast. All right, final segment of the Ron Show. Trying to finish up on what I thought. I was trying to get through Jay Bookman's column, and then I got sidetracked by Stephanie Ruhle on MSNBC a couple of days ago. Dovetailing off of Bookman's piece where he essentially writes, Inflation played an important role. It was Democrats who paid the price for it. Sometimes that happens. Stephanie Ruhle explaining that. But I also have to remind Stephanie Ruhle from back in February when I said this. That being said, I'm always trying to warn the coastal elites. You hear that term on the right all the time. The coastal elites, they have no idea what the average person is dealing with. Stephanie Ruhle, after the New Hampshire primary, I believe, was on MSNBC and said something akin to being just openly dismissive about the way the average American family feels the pinch. Just saying essentially something along the lines of they're not getting crushed by inflation. And I cringed. I cringed and I grabbed my phone to tweet at her because I was like, no, you got to stop doing this. Because that's the sort of soundbite stuff that the opposition takes and runs with, and it really does kind of come off as elite. I said, Stephanie Ruhle at 11th hour, careful being not middle class, she's not, and insisting the middle class isn't feeling things in this economy, ma'am. That's how Democrats lose in this environment. I mean, shades of 2016. She responded, hey, credit to her for doing that, like within the hour, I believe. I did not say the middle class isn't feeling it. I said they're not getting crushed. Daryl Dominic in Metairie, Louisiana tweets, I'm middle class and way left, and I'm absolutely getting crushed. Higher homeowners insurance, flood insurance, auto insurance, higher cost of groceries, stagnant wages. I have cut back all I can in working more Sundays. I already work Saturdays. This is unreal. My 2 cents. By the way, that's the same Daryl that I just spent time with a couple of days in New Orleans in the aftermath of the election. And what did I say? Shades of 2016. What are we dealing with? Another 2016-like response at the ballot box. Anyway, Jay Bookman, going back to him. Immigration played a major role as well, and for that, Democrats have largely themselves to blame. I would nitpick a little bit, but let him finish his thoughts. They did not take the matter seriously enough, early enough, as politics or as policy, and the voters punished them for it. I would argue, however, Joe Biden asked Congress, like 2 months in office, when he did his first joint, speech before the Senate and House. He asked Congress for a bill, a bipartisan bill that he and they know all sides could be somewhat happy with. And they waited, and they spent more time photo opping than they did actually legislating, because that's what Republicans do. They don't want to solve problems. They want to politic off of problems. So I would argue that, and then, of course, this past spring, we had the bipartisan bill finally, 3 years into the Biden presidency, and who sidetracked it? Donald Trump. Anyway, he's not wrong that they probably waited a little too long waiting for Congress to act. Maybe they were being told behind the scenes, no, we're working on it. We're getting close. Kind of like the Roadrunner and the Coyote, right? Anyway, Bookman continues. However, this ran a lot deeper than policy. According to exit polls, for example, 81% of those who identified as white, born-again Christians voted for Trump. It's just inexplicable. Seeing him as their means to seize the earthly power that they crave, that the Bible and the First Amendment warn them against seeking. Take all of the rest of the country. Voters of every religion, race, and color, and 58% of them rejected Trump. White evangelicals have played a kingmaker for him. In full expectation, he will reward them. And he will, even if he won't. Bookman writes, internationally, this election marks the abdication of our role as leader of the free world, and no one else will pick up the responsibility that we have tossed in the gutter. The confidence and faith that other countries long placed in us that we had earned is now gone and can never be restored. The world will begin to rearrange itself, and I fear the initial victims will be our friends in Ukraine, Bookman writes, and later Taiwan, who have no doubt watched all this in dread of what is coming. Around the world, other nations see us exposed as unreliable allies and will seek to reorient to other power centers to find safety under other shields. That is part of what Trump campaigned upon, and that is what will happen. Those who see themselves as friends of Israel and of this particular Israeli government are no doubt celebrating, but the loss of American prestige and influence this entails can only make Israel more vulnerable in the long run. Absolutely. In a world increasing unfriendly to their cause, we will no longer be able to provide Israel with diplomatic or economic cover. We have no credibility. The 19th century economic policies that Trump sold that he apparently believes deeply in are dangerous and impractical, guaranteed to produce wide suffering. Elon Musk said as much. Remember? Tariffs, the deportation of millions, the unleashing of predatory capitalism. It is unworkable, but who in his circle or in the Republican Party now dares to tell him so? Bookman asks. Excuses are easy in times like this. Explanations are more difficult, both intellectually and emotionally. For example, it is an excuse, not an explanation, to argue that this is the fault of Kamala Harris. She ran an excellent campaign under uniquely challenging circumstances, trying to launch a candidacy from nothing. She was up against something bigger than herself. Nor is it a failure of the media. I disagree. The excuse assumes that people just did not know, that they voted out of ignorance, and that there is some bit of news or insight that might have changed the outcome. None of that is remotely true, Bookman opines. This is the third consecutive time in which Trump has led a national ticket. He has been our dominant political and cultural figure for a decade now, remaking much of the country in his image. Ugh. By this point, there is nothing about Trump's character or intentions that we do not know in fine-grained detail, nothing that remains hidden. What we have done in full, complete knowledge. To borrow from Trump's favorite parable, we know he was a snake when we took him in. I get pushback from some on the left when I write that we have done this. They respond with a defensive insistence that we didn't do this, that they did this. That is a false comfort, Bookman opines. If we ourselves, as a nation, as we should, as we must, then we as a nation together have done this. We can't wash our hands of it. If we helped win World War II, if we put a man on the moon, then we have elected Trump a second time. Earlier this year, the Supreme Court told Trump that there would be no legal consequences to anything he does as president. The voters have now told him that he also faces no political consequences. A vindictive Donald Trump, with the power of the presidency and a free hand, is a terrible thing to ponder. He has stoked a thirst for retribution among his followers that he might not be able to resist even if he wanted to do so, and he doesn't. Bookman finishes, an election will come in 2 years. The pendulum swings. Seasons change. 2 years of an unfettered, utterly triumphant Trump may produce a case of buyer's remorse on a scale not seen in decades. If it does not, if the public continues to embrace what is coming our way, then that's who we have allowed ourselves to become. MAGA, baby. Jay Bookman in today's Georgia Recorder. Actually, this was posted yesterday. Just now getting it to you today here on The Ron Show. And he's not wrong. We wake up to a country that gave us results, some that I question, some that I worry about, some that I wonder. There are some questions about some lagging results thanks to the USPS and mail-in voting. And I think there's still like a state house race here in Georgia, in Gwinnett County. There's issues with whatever. I'm not going to play the conspiracy game. I'm going to let folks whose job that is to actually parse that out do that. And if they come back with information that we should know, then we should know. But listen, Garrick Marlin, slow-rolled prosecution that was necessary, and for that, we're being rewarded with non-prosecution. Jack Smith took a long time to get his case together. And listen, I'm no special prosecutor. I have no history of that. I understand it takes a long time. I look at the Fonnie Willis, Nathan Wade scenario. Screw the pooch. Pardon the pun. We did this to ourselves. And Democrats, in some cases, taking the high road and trying to not seem political while obviously letting the Justice Department do what the Justice Department needed to do, but on a slower trajectory, has us where we are. There's plenty of blame to go around. Pick some up for yourself and realize what you're complicit in, what I'm complicit in, accept it, and try and figure out how to fix it moving forward. I've said all along, information is our ally. Facts, math, data, science. At our backs, we just have to open the sail and start sailing in the right direction. It's going to do it for today's Ron Show and for the week. Show notes at ronshowatl.com. I'll see you Monday here, 9 a.m. at America One Radio. 5 to 6 p.m. the replay, 11 p.m. to midnight at Progressive Voices via TuneIn. Have a great weekend if you can. Force yourself outside for some sunlight and some fresh air. Take care of yourself.